It has often been said by vast and various sources that the machine picks the man. Well, this wasn't a machine, but it picked Sam all the same. Sam had been kicked out of the hotel yet again for the sake of Dean and Cass doing whatever it was that Dean and Cass did alone. Sam didn't think about it because if he did, he was sure it was going to break his brain. It was nothing against his brother finally discovering the fact that he wasn't as steady in his sexuality as he thought he was. Far from it. Sam just didn't want to be a part of it. Well, at least not be a part of a few particular things, namely the questionable noises floating through the door, headboard mysteriously banging against the wall at Bobby's all night, or the occasional sigh of Cass and Dean shifting through the night air. Because of this strong desire to not experience these questionable and mysterious events, Sam had taken to sacrificing his well-deserved quiet time in the hotel for wandering around the local mall at peak hours. All for the sake of his needy brother, an equally needy Angel, of course. In other words, it was all to avoid possible awkward situations and pointed stares. Ones that clearly stated the Angel and his charge needed some space, but didn't want to announce it because they haven't announced anything to anybody yet, regardless of the fact that everyone worth knowing already knew. So Sam left. And that's how he found himself standing in front of it. Well, at least standing in front of a window display that held it captive. The it in question was seemingly nothing more than some tan canvas hastily stitched together in a quality that only a factory running on overtime could provide. The seams were questionable, vaguely making a threat to break if too much stress was placed upon it. The material was cheap, and the whole thing was overpriced by at least 6 times its actual value. Yet none of that seemed to matter, because Sam was bizarrely entranced. And it wanted it that way. Day in and day out, it sat in the display and waited. It watched the window shoppers and potential buyers drift past with varying stages of interest. Mildly, it held a bit of interest back, like it was flirting with the idea of going home with some of them, but never honestly entertained the intention past the flirt. So there it remained, trapped behind its glass prison, as it waited, like Sleeping Beauty in her coffin. And Sam was Prince Charming. From the moment it noticed Sam looking, curiously stepping forward, it knew. It knew in an instant that they were fated, and Sam would have no way out of taking the plunge to rescue it from the desolate isolation of the glass prison display. So it called to him. With Sam standing in front of it, staring so intensely, it was sure this was love, or at least as close to love as it was ever going to feel. So it doubled the charm and tripled the appeal, crying silently out to Sam, who would be rendered helpless in a matter of moments. If it were possible to look smug, it would have in the moment that Sam stepped foot inside the door. "Is that a purse?" Dean scoffed, and both Sam and his object did not approve. "It's not a purse, it's a Murse. You tell him, Sammy." "A what? I've never heard of such a thing," Cass commented from the background. Dean laughed. "That's 'cause your sexuality isn't in question like Sammy's," he joked to his Angel. They all paused awkwardly. Even the Murse felt a little bit weird about that one. "It's useful," Sam snapped, stroking the Murse's detachable cell phone pocket affectionately. "Right," was all Dean could come up with. The Murse desperately wished it could swing up and hit this man in the face. Instead, it exuded a hostile aura in his direction. Dean eyed it with suspicion. For the next few weeks, the Murse never left Sam's side. They would take long walks together, when Dean and the Angel had private post-apocalyptic business to attend to. They slept together in Sam's bed, but the Murse didn't try anything. Sam wasn't ready for that yet. The Murse could sense that his beautiful prince had been hurt before, and it didn't want to damage the bond that they had built. Sam told it about his life while they sat together, when it lay trustingly in his lap. He didn't reveal everything about his tragic past, but probably more than he had shared with anyone in a long while. One day, Sam even pulled the Murse up to his face and let a few tears seep into its soft canvas while he talked of someone named Jess. The Murse knew it shouldn't be jealous of a dead girl, but still, she had obviously known Sam in a way that it didn't. When they traveled on the road, the Murse made sure it wasn't neglected to the back seat of the Impala, which it had to admit was a handsome life partner for Dean. Ignoring the sidelong looks from Dean, Sam kept his precious Murse in his lap or tucked carefully between his legs. Sometimes Sam drove, and he would let the Murse lay in front of him on the dashboard so he could talk to it late at night, while Dean snored in the passenger seat. Finally, their connection grew too strong for either of them to deny. They were in the parking lot of a small, neon-lit motel. Sam was buying a soda from a vending machine, and when he reached into the Murse's folds to retrieve a dollar bill, his fingers tingled with sensual intensity. The Murse made its move. It was time. Sam knew it too, and rushed back to the door of their motel room, with the Murse thumping against his firm behind as he ran. Dean and Cass were in the room, talking in hushed tones. They went silent when Sam burst in, squeezing the Murse against him with a sweaty hand. "Get out," Sam said. "Excuse me?" Dean asked, looking incredulously at his brother. "Both of you, out! It's our turn to have the room." Cass, for once, seemed to pick up on what was going on. "Dean," he said, "why don't we take a walk? I think Sam needs some time by himself." On his way out, Dean kept an eye on his brother, particularly noting the way that Sam was indignantly clutching the Murse to himself. When they were gone, the Murse weighed heavily on Sam's shoulder, pulling him down onto the bed. Sam took off his shirt and let the Murse slide against his bare skin. The Murse lay across his chest, tenderly reassuring him that it was all right, that it would be gentle with him. That night, Sam discovered compartments he didn't know the Murse possessed. Hours later, when it was over and Sam slept soundly beside his love, the Murse heard the front door open. Someone tiptoed in. Probably that bastard Dean. It didn't matter. The Murse finally had what it had wanted all along, to be safe and satisfied in the arms of Sam Winchester. Then, it heard a low, threatening voice near the side of the bed. "You're not taking my brother away from me, bitch bag." When a foreign hand wrapped around its limp strap, it was horrified to find that it couldn't even scream. Sam awoke to the morning light filtering through the translucent curtains. He shifted to pull the Murse closer to him, only to find the spot void of his canvassed companion. His eyes flew open in an instant with horror, mapping patterns across his brow. Where had it gone? Why did this sort of thing always happen to him? After 10 solid minutes of frantic thrashing, Sam realized the Murse was nowhere to be found. "Dean!" It was Cass who answered the wail, awkwardly making his way into the room from the bathroom, which was curious because Cass didn't need to ever use the bathroom. Sam didn't take even a second to breathe a word before he leapt off the bed and snagged Cass's shirt collar, which, had he been less vivid and more in touch with reality, he may have noticed the missing buttons and the curious red marks around the angel's neck. "Where is it?" The hiss threatened disembowelment, and Cass, being Cass, merely stared at the face of death and blinked. "I have no idea what you're talking about, Sam." Cass was a really bad liar. He shuffled his feet and side-glanced every time he wasn't telling the truth on purpose. This only served to make Sam twice as angry. "Don't lie to me, Cass! Where is it?" "He doesn't have it." Sam ripped his attention from Cass and threw it to Dean, who was storming towards his brother, the air of possessive protectiveness flaring off of him. Instinctively, Sam dropped Cass's collar and smoothed it down for good measure. After all, he wanted to find the Murse, not die before he knew where it was. "Then where is it, Dean?" Sam's expression was turning dark as it had looked when he was possessed by the devil himself. Dean paused next to Cass, standing too close to the angel before casually reaching over to pop up the collar. Sam thought to comment, but shifted his attention to the main topic point. "Dean," he warned once again, "give it back." "Sammy, we need to talk." Dean furrowed his eyebrows. "We try to be understanding of your—" There was a pregnant pause as he clearly was looking for the right words. "Well, either way, it's not healthy." "This is an intervention." Cass cleared his throat. "Healthy?" Sam exploded all at once. "You want to talk about healthy? You're the one having sex with a male angel!" "I am not!" Collectively, the entire party turned various shades of crimson. "Actually," Cass began, but Dean cut him off. "Besides, that's none of your business." "You've made it my business, kicking me out of my room every night. I just wanted to spend one night with Jess Jr."
aimed at Jess Jr.?
No. Sam looked defensive.
Maybe.
That's not the point. Quit changing the subject and give him back.
Him? Sammy.
No! Sam shouted. I won't listen to this! He had to get Dean back for this, to show him what it felt like to have something you loved taken away by someone you trusted. He spun around and snatched Dean's keys off the end table. He held them up, threateningly. Dean's face fell. Cass looked mildly confused.
Don't do anything stupid, Sammy.
Dean spoke slowly, reaching out for his keys. No, you get the keys when I get Jess Jr.
Fine, whatever you want. Just don't do anything we both might regret.
Sam looked into his brother's desperate eyes.
You promise to give Jess Jr. back? Sure, of course. The keys.
Sam, with very shaky hands, warily placed the keys into Dean's outstretched palm. This was a level of trust he hadn't wagered in his brother in a very long time. And just as soon as the keys hit Dean's hand, he snatched them up with a maniacal glint in his eye.
It's in the car, bitch!
And then he was gone. Like, out the door and around the corner, gone. Sam stared at the empty space where Dean had been, rage creeping up his spine and lighting fire in his eyes before his feet sprinted into a run. Standing in the empty room, Cass shifted.
I really should stop this.
Outside, Sam body tackled Dean into the Impala, and an epic struggle, which would have put the apocalypse to shame, began. There was wrestling on the hood and hair pulling on the trunk before Sam landed a sucker punch to Dean's solar plexus, effectively knocking the wind out of him. The keys silently tumbled towards the ground before the younger brother snatched them out of the air and jammed them into the door, ripping it open in a single fluid motion. And there it was. Jess Jr. lying morosely across the back seat, just waiting for Prince Charming to come rescue it. Sam reached for it tenderly, eyebrows drawn together in worry. Had Dean been kind? Or did he hurt Jess Jr.? Jess, Sam whispered, pulling the Murse into his arms to cradle it against his chest with all of the love and affection you could give another human. Or inanimate lover. Whatever.
Holy shit, is that Lucifer?
Dean sputtered out of the blue, hand pointing at some distant point behind Sam. Sam really should have known better, and really should have seen right through that stunt only a tween would come up with. But the devil was still a sore spot with Sam, and he couldn't help but look. Straightening up with all the rigidness of a board, he craned his neck around to see. You know, just in case. Dean, that bastard, took the opportunity to grab the bottom of the Murse still clutched in his brother's arms and yank as hard as he could. A terrible ripping sound filled the air, as if it were in slow motion. And the Murse's handle tore off in Sam's hand, while the rest of the bag followed Dean. Too stunned to move, Sam watched as his brother fled the scene with the Murse tucked under his arm like a goddamn football. Jess Jr. was no football! His legs finally found their will to move when he realized that Dean was headed straight for the overpass next to the motel. The youngest chased as fast as he could, heart pounding against his ribs in an erratic rhythm. Dean! Don't! But he did. With all the strength his arms could muster, the eldest Winchester hurled the bag off the edge of the tallest point and watched it as it sailed towards the freeway below. Sam skidded to a halt, slamming his body into the rail in order to reach out for Jess Jr. But he was too late. The Murse fluttered slowly away, and if he listened closely, he could hear its cries wafting on the breeze. I regret nothing, it would have called as it reached the bottom. Your shoulder completed me. Anxiety knotted in Sam's stomach as a large semi-truck barreled towards it at lightning speed. I'll never forget you, it would have whispered, had it lips to speak. I know, Sam murmured the moment the truck rolled over his Jess Jr. I know. Hesitantly, Dean reached out and patted his baby brother on the back. It's for the best, Sammy.
What the hell are those?
What? They're Uggs. You know, shoes. Those aren't shoes. Those are girl shoes. They're unisex, Dean. Dude, they have laces and bows. And is that fake fur? Yes it is. What are you gonna do? Rip them off my feet and throw them off an overpass? No, I'm just gonna assume you're gay. Whatever, don't judge me and Gabriel Jr. Wait, what? Gabriel Jr.? You've gotta be kidding me. As if you have any right to judge, angel slut. Don't worry, Gabe. I won't let him touch you. Besides, he's totally Cass's bitch anyway. I am not a catcher! I mean, I wouldn't be. That is, if anything weird was going on. Which it's not, because Cass and I are straight, as in, not having sex with each other. Whatever, wing whore. I'm not a wing... Dean, I don't see why you feel the need to lie about... Shut up, Cass, we've talked about this. But Sam just stormed out. You said that we couldn't talk about us when he's in the room, which he's not anymore. Cass, you're not helping at all.